And 2 days before her death, Whitney was spotted leaving a Hollywood club. She was sweaty. She'd given her last performance of her life that night, singing Jesus Loves Me with Kelly Price. And Price defended Whitney's behavior at the party. Listen to this.
Whitney partied, she drank champagne, she sang, and gave a performance that was unscheduled because I never expected her to take the stage. I knew she was going to be there for me, and she was. And as I addressed the audience to give acknowledgement to her being there, she decided to come up on the stage. And after we embraced each other, she said, "Give me the microphone."
Now, I got to tell you, when I saw that interview, and right now when I listen to it, it gets me very, very worked up, very angry. Now, if I do my job correctly, by the end of this evening, you'll have a clear understanding of what I'm talking about. The way people are recovering poor Whitney's demise, I think, is superficial, inaccurate. For instance, here you have a good friend of hers, people around her, saying that she's great, she's toasting champagne. This is a woman with chronic addiction. A woman with chronic, multiple treatments for addiction, was just treated last May at an outpatient program where the goal is abstinence. Complete sobriety. A person with that kind of history of addiction who is holding a glass of champagne is literally drinking on their grave. That's what's happening. She's holding a poison for her. So for no one to recognize that around her, to me, is just, I'm outraged by it, and I'm saddened by it. So we're going to start this evening by talking to friends about Whitney and what the last days were like. Then we're going to get into it a little bit with people that understand this condition a little more thoroughly, who've been where Whitney was and survived, but for the grace of God. Joining me now, Nikki Gilbert, a recording artist who was with Whitney on Thursday night. Music producer at Soul Shock, has worked with Whitney, producing her 1999 hit Heartbreak Hotel. And senior executive editor of Radar Online and Star Magazine, Dylan Howard, is here. He's been on top of this story. Dylan, I'm going to start with you. What do you got for the latest?
Well, Dr. Drew, this is the what has been reported to be the cocktail that could be found as part of this autopsy and toxicology report. We've had it confirmed from multiple sources that the drugs lorazepam and Valium.
Okay, so that's Ativan and Valium, which should never, ever be used together and never, ever be prescribed to an addict. Certainly not an addict given a bottle of pills. So whoever those doctors were that did that, we need to find out. Is somebody looking into that?
Yes. The coroner's office, as part of its investigation, has already flagged the prospect that it will speak to Whitney Houston's treating physicians and also go through her medical records.
Good.
The right step as part of any death probe. But these are the drugs that have also been reported to have been in her room as part of the sweep after she died. Ibuprofen, Xanax, Midol, amoxicillin, and as I said, lorazepam and Valium. That, under any circumstances, would be a lethal combination. Mix that with booze, as we saw, that she drank on Thursday night. Yeah. She also drank in the hotel, the Beverly Hilton, on Friday night. And more photos today showing a champagne glass and a bottle of beer in her room, found in her room. It most certainly would be the cocktail that would have done this.
Sad. Now, well, again, Dylan, we at HLN can't independently confirm any of this. I'm hearing a lot of this, too. It makes sense. You know, it's hard to kill yourself with Xanax. You have to do a combination. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw some painkillers in there too. That's sort of the lethal combo is the painkillers, the benzos, and the alcohol. Nikki, you were with her towards last few days. What was she like?
Yes, I was, and I have to support what Kelly Price said. I mean, you know, at the end of the day,
she's drinking. She's a horrible addiction.
But the problem didn't start that night.
Of course not.
People need to look 15 years ago that night.
Absolutely.
So she was celebrating a friend's Grammy nominations. We were all singing. I think what Kelly was defending was the fact that we had all these press outlets that were reporting that she was disheveled and you know she was high and all this other stuff. She was with her daughter. We were all having a wonderful, wonderful time. There was no excessive drinking. There was nothing over the top or crazy.
She looked disheveled, though. You must admit, if you looked at those photos. Out of a
church, she would have been disheveled. When you're a singer,
sweaty?
Well, yeah, of course you sweat.
Bleeding?
I perspire. She's a recording artist.
Bleeding?
Bleeding? She was probably bleeding.
Was she involved in a fight that night?
No, she was not involved in a fight.
There were reports that she was involved in a fight, an altercation with another singer.
It was not a fight, and she wasn't.
But she's changed words with someone?
It was not a fight. It was misunderstanding about a seat.
Right.
And she then apologized. Stacey Francis, who is the other singer, we're going to keep it 100% and be real about it, accepted her apology. We all moved on and hugged and kissed, and it was no big deal after that.
So
there was no fight. The blood on her leg was probably from a razor, which if you're a woman, you've had that experience before. I mean, there was no fighting. It was a wonderful evening.
All right, so she had a nice evening. So
that wasn't the case.
Makes it extra super sad.
It makes extra super sad. For what reason?
That there was a lovely evening and everyone was celebrating with her, and then boom.
Yeah, it makes it very sad.
Super sad.
But what makes it more sad is that we look at the situation and we say to ourselves, oh my God, where was she nights before or weeks before? And we look at these photos and we don't hold the people accountable who need to be held accountable.
I agree with you. And also, the other thing is by getting into this conversation about the illness that this poor woman had, that we don't cast a shadow on her or her life.
Absolutely.
Solshak, you're shaking your head.
So
very much
let's
so.
go.
Well, I think, it's, this business is a tough business. I see a lot of stuff in the studios. And, to keep up the appearance that, you have to do as a superstar can be very hard.
Absolutely.
And, in the end, Whitney was an amazing singer, the world's best singer. And all this stuff we're talking about with drugs, whatever, which is, of course, horrible.
Yeah.
But let's not forget who she was. She was the best singer ever.
But so let's just remind ourselves that addiction afflicts the richest, brightest, most talented.
Absolutely.
It just does. It's not Whitney, drug addict. It's Whitney, the wonderful human being who had, just think of it as cancer. But let's not pretend she didn't have it. She had it.
Well, I like that very much. And one thing, if I may say, at Clive Davis' party, which I was at, Richard Branson came up on stage and had a great speech about exactly drugs and how we treat drugs. And one of the things he's saying that I like very much is instead of treating drugs as crime and putting all the people who are drug addicts in prison, how about looking at it as a disease and a sickness, as a country like Portugal and Europe does, that actually has succeeded in putting down the drug,
Here. Here. I'll vote for that.
Well, I was just going to say, in regards to that, Reputation.com, which analyses the amount of tweets, found that that night, when news broke that Whitney passed, 78% of people remembered her for her talent. 2% in discussions on Twitter on the night she died only were negative tweets about her and her past. So I think in a lot of ways we are remembering her for the true talent that she was, the once-in-a-generation performer. But at the same time, having this discussion, I think, is only a good thing.
It's a good thing because what's happening in Hollywood is happening throughout America. The same night that she died, I promise you 1,000 other addicts died of prescription death. And that's what kills me, is it's at the hands of my peers. Just because my peers are prescribing these medications doesn't mean they aren't deadly. Think about it, Dylan. Think how many rock stars have used illicit drugs for how many years. You've got, whether it's Ozzy or Motley Crue or the Rolling Stones. They use horrible illicit drugs. They didn't get involved with prescription drugs, and many of them are still here. Many of them are still here. Now, in the last 5 years, prescription drugs have hit the scene, and it is killing my patient. It is killing celebrities. It's killing people who have this thing we call addiction. And I, for one, am sick of it. This is a sad indictment, the fact that we're sitting here today. Michael Jackson,
Nicole Smith,
Brittany Murphy,
Ledger,
you name it. It's getting sick.